All right, let's dive into a really fascinating historical argument. It's an attempt to prove that a creator exists using nothing but pure reason. The whole challenge here is to put scripture aside for a moment and just see if logic alone can lead us to a divine conclusion. Let's see how they build their case.
So, this is the core question, right? The whole thought experiment hinges on this. Is it actually possible to build a case for God from the ground up, just using what we can observe and deduce? The entire argument is about proving this can be done without ever opening a holy book. So, where do you even begin with something like that? Well, the author starts by setting a very clear ground rule for this whole exercise. The investigation has to come from the standpoint of reason alone. That means the Bible is off the table, and we're just going to follow the trail of logic to see where it takes us.
The whole thing is framed as this totally open-minded search. The idea is to use what we can all agree on, the light of what is known, to explore the great unknown. The text basically suggests that any intelligent person who is truly unbiased will, by following this method, naturally be led toward the truth.
Okay, with the rules established, the author lays down the first major pillar of their argument, what's known as the argument from design. This whole approach pulls its evidence directly from the world all around us, and it's based on a really simple idea. Every effect has to have a cause. The author builds this on a pretty powerful analogy. Think about it. When we see a complex machine, a work of art, or a massive skyscraper, we never ever assume it just appeared by accident. We know an intelligent designer was behind it. So the text asks a pretty direct question. When we look at the vastly more complex systems in nature, like the solar system or the changing seasons, or even just a single flower, is it really logical to say that is all the product of pure, random chance?
And this quote, this is the engine driving the entire argument from design. And the text is saying that all the order we see in the universe is an effect. And because it's an effect, it demands a cause that is competent or powerful enough to produce something so intricate and harmonious. Now, the author knows there's a huge counter-argument that they have to address head-on, the theory of evolution. The text pretty much frames this theory as the main alternative explanation for all the complexity we see in life, one that doesn't need a designer at all. So to tackle this, the author first defines the concept so we're all on the same page for the argument. It's framed as a process driven by a completely unintelligent force, nature, where order somehow emerges out of chaos and chance, instead of from some kind of thought-out plan. The author's critique here is pretty blunt. First, they claim species have fixed natures, and they point to things like the mule, which is a sterile hybrid of a horse and donkey, as proof that these species boundaries are very real. Second, they argue that if this random evolution thing were true, shouldn't we see it happening all around us right now? We should be seeing creatures that are actively in between species. But here's where it gets interesting. The author doesn't completely throw out the idea of development. Instead, the text reframes it, suggesting a different model of evolution, one that isn't random at all, but is actually guided by laws that were established beforehand. So this alternative theory goes like this. Divinely established laws guided this gradual process of development until all the species we see today became fixed. And here's the really crucial part. The author argues that this entire process was finished before humankind was separately and directly created. Okay, so after arguing for a creator's existence, the text pushes the logic even further. The question shifts from if a creator exists to what that creator must be like, based only on the evidence we can see in their creation. This next part of the argument hangs on a really simple principle. A creation can't have qualities that its creator doesn't have. So the logic goes, whatever great qualities we find in humanity must also exist in the creator, but, on a completely different, infinitely grander scale. And that brings us to the attributes the author figures the creator must have. Because humans show wisdom, have a sense of justice, are capable of love, and have the power to create and influence things, the author reasons that the creator must have these qualities too, but to a perfect, absolute, and immeasurable degree. So this leads us to the final, and maybe the most important link in this whole chain of reason. If a creator with these perfect attributes really exists, the author asks, what would be the most logical thing for us to expect from them? The heart of this final argument is that attributes like wisdom and love aren't passive things you just have, they're active things you do. A being with perfect justice would naturally act justly, so the author reasons it wouldn't make sense for a just and loving creator to design beings that can reason and then just leave them in total silence. The whole case really comes to a head with this one powerful rhetorical question.
Is it really reasonable to believe that an infinitely wise creator would design a creature, us, that's uniquely able to appreciate grand designs and complex plans?
And then turn around and leave that exact same creature with zero information about its own purpose or future? The text argues this would be a flat-out contradiction. It would be an act totally inconsistent with the perfect love and justice that reason has supposedly already established. The author lands on this fascinating final piece of evidence, our own human nature. That deep-seated longing we all have for meaning and purpose, it's not presented as a flaw. It's presented as a deliberate feature, one that points directly to the logical expectation that we would receive some kind of divine revelation. And that brings the whole journey of logic to its final question. Would a creator of incredible wisdom and love really design a creature that spends its life longing for answers, only to leave them in complete silence? The author rests their entire case on this one question, arguing that reason itself points not just to a creator, but to the logical necessity of a revelation. Thanks for joining me for this breakdown.